Hi everyone, it's Jamie Lesage, and the article that I chose through Medscape this week in relation to the public health issue that we're studying is regarding child abuse. The article title is Child Abuse Maltreatment Tied to Adverse Adult Health Outcomes. And it was very interesting in our week's overview of information to learn about ACEs. And it's not the ACEs that Jeanette talks about in the Glass Castle with her father, of course, gambling and playing with card aces. It's ACEs, which is Adverse Childhood Events. And it's very interesting to learn what that actually 67% of the population can. So these adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, not a good thing, are traumatic events that can have negative lasting effects on health and behavior. ACEs include being physically, emotionally, or sexually abused as a child and growing up in a house with domestic violence, mental illness, alcohol, and drug abuse or criminal problems. And actually, interestingly enough, I was doing some research on this topic that it's very common for everyone in our population to have at least one ACE, 67% of the population. Having more ACEs on the score that's up to 10 does increase your risk for these types of health conditions that can affect your health, and they're finding out that this is affecting people's health even way beyond their childhood. So children that have abusive or other stress-filled childhoods are more likely to develop diabetes, cancer, heart disease, and other health and social problems throughout their life. It's actually really very sad. You might be wondering what is on this list, and it's actually broken down into 3 types of ACEs, and these categories are abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. So under abuse, you can have physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. Neglect could be physical or emotional neglect, and household dysfunction, which would include mental illness, in having an incarcerated relative, a mother that's treated violently, or it could be father, having substance abuse in the household, or a divorce or separation. And it's interesting what all the studies and what they're finding. And this particular article that I found talked about, had a couple different research control groups on there. And one thing that it did mention that was interesting, I guess all studies that are well respected usually will state their limitations, and it talked about that it relied on correlation, and it's hard to control because there's genetic factors that can come into play. So looking at the physical abuse, and so it does talk about warranting further research to assess adult outcomes associated with other forms of maltreatment. So that is interesting, but there have been a lot of studies on this, and that's how we learned this week that Kaiser had come out with that ACEs, which has those 10 different things that you can score just having those different stresses as a child growing up, and that it can cause long-term effects. So from the article, it talked about early life exposure to abuse, receiving government assistance, externalizing mental health problems, and also internalizing mental health problems, having a history of you're more likely to have all these issues, drug conviction, crime. Early physical abuse will disrupt social relationships by making it harder for children to trust other people and feel secure in social relationships, and it will affect relationships long term. And I'm including this really cute video with this animation actually, and I hope that you take the time to watch it. It's only 5 minutes, but the child talks about how they're in fear a lot, and it talks about even later in life that can lead to anger. So it's a cute animation. It's really actually kind of sad, but it talks about just helping kids get increased coping skills, and us being nurses in this area, we will run into this and we can educate parents and just try to make a difference. So thank you, everyone.